Hey everyone, I'm Joe, and today it's time for me to do my September reading wrap-up. September was an extremely good reading month. I read 24 books in total, which is the highest amount of books I've read this year. Actually, it's the highest amount of books I've read in a single month since I started this channel 3.5 years ago. And now, without further delay, I'll get straight on talking about the books, because this video is already going to be long as it is. The first 3 books that I read were on my Kindle ebooks, and those were CryoBurn, Captain Vorpatril's Alliance, and Gentleman Jole and the Red Queen, all by Lois, McMaster, Bujold. These are books 14, 15 and 16 in the Vorkosigan Saga. This is a long-running science fiction series, and it's currently 16 books long, which means I am now fully up to date with the Vorkosigan Saga, which I'm both happy about and sad about, because I've got nothing else to read within this world for now. Now, I'm not going to say too much now, because I'm going to be doing a Vorkosigan series overview video now that I've finished them in the next month or so. But suffice to say, I love this series really badly. It is absolutely fantastic science fiction series. Actually, it's probably my favourite science fiction series ever now. And the reasons for that are, frankly, because the writing is simply amazing, the characters are brilliant, the world's interesting, the plots are great, and just the way the characters and the worlds and everything just fits together so well. Frankly, this makes up for an absolutely fantastic series, and I would really recommend it, but I'll say more in the upcoming video. The next 2 books that I read were Riverside and The Privilege of the Sword. These are books 1 and 2 in the Riverside Trilogy by Kushner. Now, I am going to be reading the 3rd book in the month of October, so I am not going to be talking about these too much now, because I am going to be doing a trilogy review once that 3rd book is read. So I will say now though that this is a fantasy trilogy. It doesn't have magic in it, it does have sword fights, and it does have political intrigue. And frankly, the writing is fantastic. The characters are described extremely well, and they're very in-depth, and there's a lot of substance to them, far more than I'm used to recently, frankly. And they are absolutely fantastic fantasy novels, they really are, and I can't praise these enough. I mean, I got both novels 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, although I am fairly generous, even so it's still good. The next 2 books are Time and Space, both by Stephen Baxter. This is book 1 and book 2 in the Manifold Trilogy. I will be reading book 3 in October, like the Riverside book, and again I will be doing a trilogy review, so I'm not going to say too much now. Suffice to say, these are science fiction novels. They are classified as hard science fiction. They have all sorts of very technical and advanced scientific terms in them. For instance, they are one of the few novels where quantum gravity is used, and let's just say I've been wanting a book to use quantum gravity for years. That may sound strange, but I have. And these are very unusual books because they're not direct sequels as such. They're something slightly different. They are very peculiar because of the way they're written, but if you like Baxter, which obviously I do, because these are like 6th or 7th novels I've read by now, something like that, then these will work out well for you, and they've got some really interesting ideas in them with some rather peculiar writing. Next up, I read Garment of Shadows by Laurie R. King. This is the 12th novel in the Sherlock Holmes and Mary Russell series. Obviously, the fact that it's the 12th book in an ongoing mystery and crime series means I can't really say too much about it, frankly. Other than say, I'm obviously, hence being the 12th book, I'm loving this series. It is about essentially an alternative version of Conan Doyle's is Sherlock Holmes, where Sherlock Holmes retired obviously before the first book started, and one day he meets a young woman called Mary Russell. They realise they have the same sort of way of thinking of things and the same way of looking at the world, and indeed the same sort of logical minds. So they end up essentially, obviously, going round and solving various mysteries and crimes together. This one was an interesting one because it starts off with Mary Russell in a hotel room. She's had an injury to her head and she has amnesia, so she actually doesn't know who she is. and it just goes in a rather interesting way from there, and I just really do like the series, and I will be doing a series overview once I finish them. Next up was Personal by Lee Child. This is the 19th book in the Jack Reacher series. This series has obviously been going for nearly 20 years now, amazingly, and the idea of the series is very, very simple. It's essentially the main character, Jack Reacher, is a former military policeman. He left the army and is now wandering around America, getting into situations and essentially sort of helping out solve crimes and sort of damsels in distress. Kind of a bit cliche in some respects, but they're easy to read, they're straightforward, and they're just really good breaks between other tougher books. Indeed, that's what I've always used them for. In this one, this is a little bit different because for the first time ever, this is a book where Jack Reacher is actually in England, London, England to be precise, and almost the entire book is set in London, which is very unusual because it's always America. Every other book has been, with just very brief trips maybe to another country, but then he comes back to America. So the fact that this is non-American is different, and Lee Child is an English author that now lives in America. So it's an interesting book, I think. Next up, I read Wildtrack by Bernard Cornwell. This is a thriller novel. It is one of 5 thriller novels that Bernard Cornwell wrote. He's more well known for reading historical fiction, of course, what with the Sharp books and such, and the Saxon series, which I do intend to read eventually, although I'm waiting until a few more books out because I'm in the hurry. This is an interesting and well-written novel, which I really, really enjoyed. The premise of this novel, indeed, the theme throughout the 5 of these thrillers, which are unrelated, is the fact that all of them have a nautical theme in some manner. In this one, a former army veteran who has been badly hurt by obviously his experiences in a war comes back to England, and all he wants to do is to get his boat up and running that he loved from before he left, get away from his ex-wife, and just basically sail off onto the ocean and do his own thing, fish for his dinner and just forget the rest of the world. Obviously that means he has to repair his boat, which require resources which he doesn't have, and things happen because obviously he has to get money to pay for his boat, and there's a rich guy, and it is well written, there's good characters, and it treats some interesting subjects, frankly, and I did quite enjoy this book, and I will indeed be looking forward to the other 4 books that he wrote that are thrillers. The next 2 books are by the same author, although they are not related, and those are Now and Forever by Bradbury and Farewell Summer, also by Bradbury. Now, first of all, Farewell Summer. This is a sequel to Dandelion Wine, which is a coming of age tale about a young boy called Douglas Balding, and I loved the first novel, Dandelion Wine, and the interesting thing to note is that if you love the first novel, you will like this novel, because of the simple fact that Bradbury actually wrote both that novel and this as one novel originally over 50 years ago, and when he took it to his publisher basically asked him could he split the book in half because it was a bit too long, so he did, and then that became Dandelion Wine, and this was released over 50 years later in the mid-2000s, and this is just as good as Dandelion Wine. The writing is beautiful and it's simple but evocative, and I just love Bradbury, as you know, and his books are fantastic, they really are. In Now and Forever, this is actually a series of 2 novellas in half. It's not a very long book either. The first of which is Somewhere a Band is Playing. This is about a guy called James Cardiff. He comes to a rather strange town and things happen there. If the people there are not quite as they appear to be, or are they? Or is it him? I can't say too much about this because it doesn't directly link in with any of his other books, but it does have the same feel as many of his other books. Same beautiful writing and evocative imagery, and because it's short I can't risk saying anything. And the other novel in this, or novella I should say, is Leviathan 99, which is a reimagining of Herman Melville's Moby Dick, because if you didn't know, Ray Bradbury actually worked on the screenplay for the movie of Moby Dick, many years ago, and he loved the idea of Moby Dick. Hence, he wrote a version of Moby Dick where basically it's set in space. The whale is a comet, and it's a spaceship chasing a comet down, and it's really weird, but it is quite interesting. I didn't like it as much as maybe some of his others, but it's bound to happen with many stories, frankly. Next up, we have 5 graphic novels, and those are the Serenity graphic novels. And I've owned these, well, the earlier ones, for many years, and I've finally got around to actually reading them. They are Those Left Behind, Better Days and Other Stories, The Shepherd's Tale, Leaves on the Wind, and finally No Power in the Verse. Now, these 5 graphic novels obviously are based around the Firefly and Serenity series, which was made in the early 2000s by Joss Whedon, and I obviously love the series and film they made of it. Obviously the series got axed far too early, much to a lot of people's disappointment, mine included, because I loved the series when it was out. Now, these graphic novels are set at different points throughout the series and film. The first 2 graphic novels are set mainly during the series, and one of them has a story that's set just after the events of the movie. One's actually in between the series and the film. The third is The Shepherd's Tale, is to do with the tale and history of Shepherd book. Unfortunately, that is the weakest of the 5 graphic novels because it's frankly far too thin. It's that thin, which is considerably thinner than the other 4. And then these 2, the 4th and 5th ones, are fantastic because these are actually direct continuation of the series and film. So basically, if Joss Whedon was able to continue after the film ended, Serenity ended, this is a possible idea of where he went. And I'm going to put them down because I don't really want to hit myself in the head with them again like I just did. Next up, I read Concrete Island by J.G. Ballard. Now this is the smallest book I've read this month, actually smaller than Tuesday by Bean Novellas. It's extremely small indeed. This is actually a very interesting and curious novel because it is heavily psychological, as in most Ballard stories. In this one, a guy is basically driving his fast car along the motorway in England one day, and basically he crashes off the road and gets stuck in an island that is very hard to access in any other way. It's got a big fence around it, blocking it off most ways, and the only other way off this island is up a very steep slope. Of course, it's a motorway embankment, but he's injured his leg, so he can't climb up, and he can't attract attention from passing motorists because they obviously just think he's some kind of crazy homeless person, gesturing and looking all injured and sort of wild. It's very dark and very creepy at points. It's highly psychological and very intense, and it just has a very sort of slightly unnerving feel about parts of it, which, considering the size of it, is frankly an achievement by itself. And this was fantastic. I really did enjoy this novel, and I can't recommend books by Ballard overall because he's a really interesting author that has got a remarkable way with words and writing. Next up was Sea of Rust by C. Robert Cargill. This is a science fiction novel set in a world which is post-apocalyptic. Humanity has been wiped out, and the reason that they've been wiped out is because basically we've made a series of robots with fully sentient AI, and they basically wiped us out, frankly. And now this is a world, an Earth, that is inhabited entirely by AI robots. And however, there are some AI intelligences called One World Intelligences, so there's a set of them, and each of them wants to be, hence their name, a One World Intelligence. They want to essentially dominate all other robotic life forms and become a sort of a global hive mind, essentially controlling everything robotic on Earth. And obviously there's more of them, so they're constantly at war, and there's a load of robots all over the world, obviously millions of them, that don't want to be part of any of the hive minds. So it's an interesting novel with interesting ideas. It's well written. There's a few little flaws on it, and indeed I will be doing a review of this novel in the upcoming future as well, so I'm not going to say too much now. But overall, I did greatly enjoy it, and I would recommend it. It's a good, solid science fiction novel. Next up, I read The Bastard Legion by Gavin Smith. This has a main character called Miss Cat Corbin, who is a thief and a hacker. She one day decides to essentially steal or hijack a prison colony ship. And this ship is filled with over 2,000 extremely dangerous and extremely unpleasant criminals. So what she does, essentially, she takes them each out of their sort of long-term cryonic storage and fits them with explosive collars around their necks and makes it so basically if they do anything that she doesn't want them to do, she can just basically detonate their collars at will and their heads explode. Frankly, so she's got herself a unwilling convict army, and she has an adventure basically with this convict army and gets to know some of them, even though a lot of them are violent and vile and horrible characters, frankly. I mean, she's not exactly an angel herself, which is interesting mix because she's not a nice character in some ways, but obviously she's dealing with lots of prisoners. Most of them are in there for life, frankly, and they're extremely violent. And this is part of an ongoing series, well, the start of an ongoing series, I should say, and I will be reading the future books because it's definitely a good, solid start and a good book overall. Now we get on to the Yellow Masterworks books, which there are 4 in total. The first of which is Dhalgren by Samuel R. Delany. Now this is a well-known and well-loved book by Delany, but I'm sad to say this is not a well-loved book by me. I actually hated this book quite severely, in fact. Frankly, the book starts off in a post-apocalyptic type world. A young guy is going on the road one day. He comes across a town and comes across some people, and he gets the nickname of The Kid because he actually doesn't know his real name. And he gets to know this city a little bit and the people in it, and I don't understand what the purpose of this story is trying to do. That's why I didn't like it though, because it seems to be a lot of excessive talking about things that don't seem to help the story out. It doesn't help the fact that I didn't understand what Delany was trying to achieve with this. What was his ultimate purpose? Was he trying to say something about society? I don't know. I didn't quite get it. The writing was interesting, but I didn't find anything truly original there. And the fact that I didn't understand most of it and I was just basically puzzled the whole time kind of ruined the book for me, frankly. So I really didn't enjoy this at all. Other people that have loved this book, and I'm not saying it's a bad book, it's just I didn't understand it particularly at all, sad to say. Next up was Raising the Stones by Sheri S. Tepper. This is the sequel of sorts to Grass, the second book in the R universe. There's a third book as well, which I want to read. I buddy read this with Rachel, and I will link Rachel's wrap-up video where she talked about this, because frankly she talked about it in a really interesting, eloquent manner, as Rachel always does, and basically she talks about it in a far better way than I would do now, because this is quite complex. It deals with religion in a really interesting way. I love this far more than Grass. Grass was okay, this was much better, and I really did enjoy it. Got some fantastic ideas. The writing was better. The writing was also sharper. And as far as the premise goes, it's about human settlers arrive on this world. They settle this one particular land. So some settlers on another land, and they are got very different culture, and they basically don't get on with each other. This one land in particular, it's got a very drastically different culture than everybody else, and events go on from there. And it features religion in an interesting way, which is for me is unusual because normally I don't like religion in books. It often doesn't work. In this, it really does. The penultimate book that I read was Lord of Light by Roger Zelazny. Now, this novel is unfortunately in a similar situation to Dhalgren, because this is a well-known novel, not quite as well known as Dhalgren, but still well-known and somewhat well-liked. However, I didn't understand this novel in the slightest, this novel just puzzled me from page 1 till the last page, and as a result I didn't particularly enjoy it, because, well, if you don't understand something, how can you enjoy it? Especially when you're puzzled as well. I didn't understand what the message was. This has non-Western religion in it, and it has gods and things, but I didn't understand the purpose of the book. What was Zelazny trying to say in it? I frankly can't tell you. And I would look out there for reviews of this, because I'm not going to say too much about it, because, again, like Dhalgren, I just didn't understand it. I'm not saying it's a bad book, it just didn't work for me at all. I'm sad to say. I was kind of hoping it would because of what it is, but not to be this time. Finally, the last book that I read was Stand on Zanzibar by John Brunner. Now, this one I did enjoy. And this is an interesting novel because it starts off with a focus on two guys who happen to be sharing an apartment. And basically, they end up splitting away from each other and going on their own separate journeys throughout the novel, which are drastically different, but they do interlink in quite curious ways, and they end up sort of coming back together slightly at the end of the novel, and sort of, finding out what each other's done. It is set on an Earth in the sort of semi-near future, where technology is slightly more advanced than it is now, but not by miles. And it's about the culture and society of this near future Earth, and the journeys of these two main characters in it, and how they interact with the world, how the world interacts with them. The writing is curious as well, because he does some unusual things with the actual layout of text and stuff, which normally I don't appreciate when authors do that, when they start doing unusual blocks of text and things and do weird stuff. But this actually did work for me. I'm glad to say, especially as this, like the other masterworks that I read, is a well-known novel by John Brunner and is a well-loved novel. And this time I actually did like it as well, which I'm really happy I can say that. So, with that said, that is it for all of the books that I read in September. I'm not going to hold them up like I often would do now, because frankly with 24 books I'm going to end up dropping them all over the floor, which would be bad for both me and the books themselves. Anyway, if you've read any of these, or would like to read any of them, or would like me to tell you more information about any of them, well, if I can anyway, then please leave a comment. Also, if you have any suggestions on books you think I might like based on any of these, then again, please leave a comment and we can have a talk. I'm always open for new books and new authors. Of course, that's what I'm on BookTube for. Well, one of the reasons. All my social media links can be found in the description box below, as they always are. And with that said, that is it for this video. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.